Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of My EdTech Life. Thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful day, wherever it is that you're joining us from around the world. We hope that today has been a fantastic day. Thank you so much, as always, for all of your continual support. We appreciate all the likes, the shares, the follows. Thank you so much to all our new subscribers on YouTube. Thank you so much for that, as our goal is to get to 1,000 subscribers this year, and we're very close. So thank you, as always, for all of your support. And I am excited to be here on this wonderful day. And we have an amazing guest. We have an international guest. We are talking to Marce Lancioni, who is joining us from Argentina this evening. Marce, how are you doing today?
Thank you for having me in the show. I'm amazed by the opportunity to get to talk to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Marce. Again, I know the time difference is from here to Argentina. It's about 2 hours ahead. So thank you so much for making us part of your day. And I'm excited to learn so much from you, as our topic is going to be about AI. And we know since November of 2022, things have changed. The education space has changed, the business space, everything has changed. So I'm really excited to dive in and hear your perspectives and learning from you in what you're seeing in Argentina with inteligencia artificial. So I'm really excited to hear from you. But before we get into that, can you give a little brief introduction and share with us what your context is within the education space?
Yeah, sure. So I have been a teacher for more than 30 years. I teach English as a foreign language. I got mind blown with the introduction of AI. So I'm really curious about it. And I have always liked technology. From the very beginning, I started experimenting with technology myself. And then with the introduction of AI, it was like, okay, this is a game changer. I have to get into it right away. At this moment, I'm teaching English in two language schools and also in a teacher training center. So yeah, doing a couple of things that I really.
Excellent. This is great because you're my first guest that we get to talk to a little bit more about how possibly you're leveraging AI for language learning or language acquisition. So this is great to hear your perspective on it. So let's go back to November 2022, or when was the first time that you heard about AI? And then what were your first impressions?
Oh, yeah, sure. Somebody just brought this onto the table and they started talking about ChatGPT. And I was like, what are you talking about? As I told you before, I'm the kind of person who likes experimenting. So I said, okay, I have to give this a go. And that's how I got started. Goodness, I just couldn't believe my eyes. And I said, okay, I have to try this with my students. The thing is that I teach teenagers, and teenagers as an audience can be really challenging. And in this particular case, I have this group of boys who love football. So I said, okay, what is it that you can find out about Messi on ChatGPT? Let's see what he can tell us. And it was like mind blowing for them as well. So that was an interesting way to get them engaged in the class. That's how I started, like putting it into practice together with my students, because I wanted to know how they were like dealing with the whole thing. And it worked wonders. And then I said, okay, here there is something that will change the dynamic in the classroom. And let's see how we can incorporate it. And that's how I started.
Excellent. That is so great to hear. And especially hands on is usually the best way to learn. And it's very interesting that you introduced it to your students. And then I hear recently a gentleman that I follow, Jason Gulia, who's been on the show. He said, and he teaches in college, and he says that there was a student that he says, "Well, yeah, I've tried it, not a big fan of it, not really impressed," talking about the ethics of it and things of that sort. So it's very interesting that coming that from a student perspective on it, but then you also have the students that are excited about it that can really take off and run with it. So now when you introduced it, I know that you mentioned the students really took to it. They really enjoyed it. What has been some of the things that you've been able to work on since that moment, where have you taken this as far as maybe to the next level as far as practice is concerned, not only for your students, but for you as an educator?
Oh, that's a very interesting point because I have to admit that the whole incorporation of AI into my practices has made me experience my teaching life differently. It's like it has created this excitement that I think that I had lost. That I have been doing this for 30 years. So sometimes it can get repetitive. And I don't know, like it brought some fresh air to my own practices. And I started incorporating certain tools and certain things that transformed my lessons. And students could actually see that. So that was fascinating because I was like transmitting all this passion and this excitement. They could feel it. And somehow they got into it just the way I did. So that was fantastic. And the thing is that I have to be honest here. When I started using it, I truly didn't understand the behind the scenes. Now I'm really concerned about that in particular. It's very important, or one of the things that I always discussed about with my colleagues and the teacher, the students, and the authorities in the schools I work for, is the importance of understanding exactly what is happening behind the system or behind tools so that they truly understand how to use it and to make a responsible use of the tools. So I have to admit that at the beginning, I had no idea about hallucinations or fabrications or those sort of things. And I started using it as if it was Google, as if it was a search engine, which of course is not the way it works. So when I started understanding exactly the way it actually works, I started changing the perspective that, like, you know, understood the need teach people or to talk to people about the behind the scene. What is AI, what it actually is, and how we can use it. So to make it, like, as I said before, a responsible and effective use of the tools.
And that is a great point, Marce, that you mentioned, because, like I said, many educators do feel that excitement. And like you said, having that classroom experience, you're absolutely right. Being in the classroom for 11 years, taking on this new role the last 8, but being in the classroom, like you mentioned, can be very repetitive. And then you have to find ways to enhance the lesson. I always say, like, spicing things up, making it exciting. And obviously, with new tools and the use of technology, that really helps in leveraging some of those tools. And like you said, I understand and I completely feel you when you said, like, it just breathed a new freshness into your lessons, and then you're passionate, and then it transmits to the students as well. And then, of course, like with me as well, from the very beginning, I was really excited about it. I had been using AI even before the big announcement on November 2022, messing around
Wow.
with AI. And then all of a sudden, it all changed for me when I had to do one simple research paper. And I chose the topic of AI. It was so new. And I said, let me dive in. And when I dove in, much like yourself, I was like, whoa, I need to maybe just take a step back a little bit, see what this is all about. And then, of course, you start seeing those concerns. And now, after a year and a half, I think a lot more people that started off maybe like you and I are slowly, whoa, we're seeing some things here we didn't quite expect. Some of the things, as far as like you mentioned, on the backside of it, me thinking of wrong information, people treating it like Google search engines, which it really isn't. It's just really statistically predictive text that comes out, some of those outputs. So then, like I said, now I'm a cautious advocate, like my great friend Dr. Nika McGee says. So tell me a little bit more how that felt when you realized that moment, because I know it happened to me, but that moment for you when you said, whoa, maybe I need to take a step back. What was going through your mind? And then now, how have things worked out for you as far as diving in deep into what's really happening behind the scenes?
That's pretty interesting because suddenly I started rethinking so many aspects of the teaching experience and the tool. And I said, okay, let's analyze the tools first and then see how this can be incorporated. So first, I had this feeling that I needed to use it in the classroom. It was more like an SPA. I don't remember the word, but it was like a need that I had at that moment to just incorporate it. And then I said, okay, let's take things more slowly. I tried to be more cautious, let's say. And the more I got to know about it, the more cautious I became. And I started reading a lot. I started watching all sort of webinars. And then I said, okay, slow down, hold your horses, and take this with more responsibility, let's say. And okay, I did lots of research. I have been studying about this a lot, studying with the material that you can find on the internet. Thank God there are many reliable resources for the general public, just like you or me, in the sense that this is accessible for everybody who is interested in diving into it. So that is fantastic. Like little by little, I started getting more familiar with terminology and what was expected from it. And well, it just happens naturally then. When I started talking about this with colleagues, and have you heard about this or that? And they had no clue of what I was talking about. As a teacher, I said, okay, this is my opportunity to spread the word and to talk about this because it is right here. And our students are using some of the tools already, and you have no clue of what they are using or what they are doing with it. It is important that we get really informed about all this. So it was like I needed to spread the word to help people understand what this is all about.
And how has that been for you? Because I'll be honest with you, I know it seems like almost like we almost get separated into one side or the other. And for myself, it's I really honestly see myself in the middle as far as just I'm enough of a squeaky wheel where I just like to question and say, hey, what are your thoughts? Is this right? Or and then just still see the positive side of it. And I know I keep telling everybody, like, hey, I love what this technology will be capable of doing once everything gets ironed out. But I think at the same time, like you mentioned, we need to slow it down a little bit because obviously everybody says all in the name of progress, all in the name of progress. But you don't want to cause harm in the name of progress and
Exactly.
especially harming some of your students or even harming yourself with some of the information that a lot of these large language models have or they give as an output. Recently, I'm seeing a lot of errors that are showing up with Google now that they're integrating their AI suggestions. You've got Meta. It seems every single application wants to put the AI right in front of you. And I think even as it's been a year and a half, it still feels like it's very in its infant stages where it's not quite right. And my biggest thing is I just don't want there to be any information that students are getting that is number one, very harmful because it's not age appropriate or it can
Right.
cause harm as far as bias, discrimination, things of that sort. And then who's going to be ultimately responsible for those harms? So those are the things that I'm still very cautious about. So I want to ask you, you started off very excited like I did. And I'm sure that maybe in sharing, we shared a lot with a lot of colleagues and coworkers. And now maybe they see that slight change in you. What has been the reaction that you have received?
At the beginning, it was like I was in this AI bubble. And then I understood that there were just a few of us in this bubble. Yes, at the beginning, they could feel that enthusiasm. And the good thing is that I have always been cautious about it. Even though I told you I dove into it because it was like mind blowing, I took it cautiously with my students in particular because I'm talking about underage students. So I didn't want to generate anything that might be undesirable. So in that particular sense, like I have always been super responsible. So I didn't have any sort of issues regarding that. But yeah, they have seen that transformation. My colleagues, my coworkers have seen this transformation. And it's very nice to see how open they are to this. And they continuously make questions regarding this because they know that I'm studying about this all the time. I always talk about the responsible use and the reliable resources. Even before, whenever they talked about using, I don't know, the internet, when they started talking about using all the resources on the internet, just try to think of these. When I started teaching, we used to use the cassette. And if a student asked me, I don't know, can you please teach me the lyrics of this particular song? Like I had to sit down and try to listen to the song, work out the lyrics myself. So just imagine I have gone through all the changes when it comes to technology. So I have learned to be cautious with the incorporation of all these in the classes. But now again, I am trying to help everybody reflect upon the responsible use of the tools. Find out exactly what is behind this tool that you have picked to use, learn how to use it, and then introduce it into your practices. That's the approach in general. And I try things myself a lot before I speak openly about those with other people. I don't know, there is a new tool. And nowadays, you know that business is business. So they are coming up with so many tools, and not all of them are reliable, let's say, or as useful as they claim to be. So I like experimenting with the tools myself before I introduce them.
That's something that is great to do and experimenting with that. And I think, like you said, I think there's been so much and so many tools that have come up. And one of my biggest concerns that you mentioned also was obviously the privacy issues, the usage agreements, things of that sort. And many times, my biggest concern is when a platform does not openly disclose what large language model they use. I feel very cautious there. And also, obviously, in the terms of service, sometimes they say, we don't save your information, we don't gather this, we won't use your information for this. However, then if you keep looking, it says, but we will use your information for our third parties, which are like OpenAI and so on. And I'm thinking
Right.
to myself, if this is an education platform and students the age of maybe even younger than 13 might be using it, my fear is the parental consent is not being, the teachers aren't getting parental consent. And number two, that the applications are not verifying that there is parental consent because, like you mentioned, one thing, business is business and it's all about that money. So, my thing is, if they're giving this for free, then how exactly is it that they're making their money? What is it that they're using in to get some of that funding? Because when you offer an application for, let's say, here in the US, they'll say like, oh, for $2,000, we will give you a pilot for your whole district. And then
Right.
all of a sudden, for $2,000, you're opening up your firewalls, you're opening up everything, and you
Everything.
paid them 2,000. But then the next year, it's going to be $16,000 for your whole district and so on. And then you won't be able to afford it. Now, I understand that the AI or to produce a lot of those answers and work those LLMs is very expensive, a lot of resources, a lot of GPUs, a
Exactly.
lot of water, a lot of environmental variables that go into it. But to myself, it's just be open and transparent because it's all about the child's safety. So I want to ask, for example, in Argentina, because that's where you work,
Mhm.
is there anything at the national level that has been already been talked about as far as artificial intelligence or any kind of AI plans, or right now it's just like the Wild West?
It's the Wild West. There are many, let's say, people like me who are very much interested in AI and the impact it will have in different fields. There is an organization that is Sociedad Argentina de Inteligencia Artificial. These people have gathered, but they are all like you and me, people who are concerned about the responsible use of the tools and the impact that this will eventually have on the development of the country. We are working as a team, let's say, in order to present these proposals to the government. But the government itself, they're not talking about this. So it's more like what teachers or doctors or whomever is trying to do with the AI in a more personal way rather than something that the government has established. So the ministers are not talking about this. The ministries are not necessarily promoting any sort of teacher development, for example, when it comes to education. So this is something that we are organizing because we are very much concerned about how this will impact education. Business is business, and we have to protect children and we have to protect their privacy. And that's why I believe that it is important that we study and understand exactly how this works so as to inform parents, inform authorities. Because if we are going to wait until the government decides to dive into this, it will be way too late. This is changing so fast that, again, if we wait until someone in a black suit makes a decision on what to do, there will be holograms already by then. So we can't wait until someone behind the desk decides the way we should approach this. And again, you have mentioned something important. Most of these companies are offering like the free trials, but then they charge you. And here in Argentina, let's be honest, there are just a few who will be able to afford what they are charging. So we will stay behind, or we will fall behind sooner or later. So I don't know. It's a big issue. It's a really big issue. And for that reason, I decided not to wait for someone else to make the decisions. I'm going to be responsible. And something that I always say to my colleague in the professional development courses, we are the ones who are responsible for what happens in the classroom. No matter what other people say, what happens in the classroom is our responsibility. What we offer our students is our responsibility. But again, we need to inform parents. We need to help the educational community understand what this is all about and take responsibility for what happens in the classroom. And that's it. Because again, we cannot wait until the government sets up the policies and the rules.
And I think that's something that's great to hear from you, and especially as passionate as you are about obviously AI and the dangers, and more than anything, just the responsible use. I really love your boldness in what you said is, in the end, you as a teacher in the classroom are ultimately responsible for what is being used for your students. And that is very bold because it just seems a little different here in the United States, where because of the hype of AI and a lot of the platforms, it seems like there's a lot of teachers that want to use it or are using it. And it's very anecdotal evidence of, oh, they seem to be improving and they're engaged, but oftentimes engagement doesn't always equal learning. Like, I can be engaged in a video game, but am I really learning something? I can be engaged in a conversation, but am I really going to learn something from that? So those are some of the things there that I see that there should be something that we need to look into. Just because somebody's engaged, is there really any learning? And do we have any research to back it up? And right now, I don't think there's even any research at all whatsoever to back up that any of these tools are actually working, other than just anecdotal evidence of saying, oh, this helps me speed up my process, or the students look, they're learning and they're doing this. I was like, we need to make sure that there's something that's measurable, concrete, and that we do see that research. Because again, oftentimes it's the scary part is, like you said, is the data, the age, and that's what concerns me the most too with a lot of the applications. It's all about getting out there. We're marketing. We'll send you shirts, just use my platform. We'll send you stickers, just use my platform. And it's free marketing. And but in the end, they're the ones who are profiting off of the teacher use and then the student use and anecdotal evidence. So that's really bold too that you mentioned that if something should go wrong, at the end, it's the teacher who's going to be held accountable because they're going to say, hey, the district can easily say, hey, we didn't, this isn't a district platform or approved platform, but because the teacher wanted to use it and because they wanted to maybe just be very popular on social media by saying that they use it, all of a sudden, all it takes is one bad answer, one wrong answer that is very inappropriate. And then all of a sudden, there that goes. And who's going to be held responsible? That the accountability is going to fall on the teacher. And I think that many parents really need to be part of the conversation, as a matter of fact. And because a
Absolutely.
lot of them, I'm sure that they don't even know half of the platforms that are being used in the district at all whatsoever. So that's something that's very important and interesting to see that even in Argentina, many miles away, we're still seeing some of those same problems. And I guess that's really what we'll see in a lot of places too. So I want to ask, are many of the platforms that are being used in Argentina, are those very similar platforms that are here in the United States, or are they more of Argentina based platforms that are getting into the education space?
Okay, I have to be totally honest here.
Mhm.
Since I'm an English teacher, I use the platforms I use or the material I incorporate is produced abroad. So there aren't platforms, or I haven't found any platforms that we could use, for example, for the teaching of English as a foreign language. I have incorporated some of the tools that they are using abroad to adapt them, let's say, for the needs that my students have. And that is another thing. You have to experiment with the tools to understand exactly which ones are suitable for your community and for your students. So at this very moment, I don't really know exactly how many platforms have been produced here in our country. I haven't used any, if there are. So yeah, I try to adapt the ones that are being used in the States or in the UK. And okay, like I'm working with those. And of course, I'm working with the large language models. And something that you said a couple of minutes ago, parents do not actually understand how those work either. I think that we have to educate the whole community, and we all have to account responsible for the use of AI. Have the feeling that parents have stepped away from the picture, and this started happening way before AI. So there are many things that people are trying to start discussing now as if it was something new. But for example, when it comes to cheating, many people or many teachers are afraid of students using this tool to cheat. Cheating has been happening forever. Like when I was a kid, my classmates would write down the answers to the questions on the back of the, I don't know, the paper, and they would cheat from there. What has changed is the tool they are using to cheat, not the cheating itself. What I love about AI is the fact that it has brought some questions back onto the table. I don't know. We should have been discussing about social media and the use of the internet. I remember 10 or 15 years ago, our students started copying and pasting answers, and teachers didn't seem to worry much about it because if the comment was, okay, never mind, at least they tried. Yeah, they tried, but it was an illegitimate use of the content.
Mhm.
No one talked about that. Now everybody is talking about copyright. So there are many things that we haven't discussed for some time. And now it's like everybody is very much concerned about it. What has
Yep.
happened like in between? What has happened with social media? Now there is evidence of the negative effect that they are having on our children's minds and brains. So,
And
what is it that we are waiting? This is AI has come to exacerbate the good and the bad of technology.
yeah, I agree with you 100% there. A lot of the stuff that you said, even in my day, like you mentioned, talking about cheating, the cheating hasn't changed. It's just the tool. Back in my day, it's like you said, it's like the little notebook or a little piece of paper, or even on our erasers, putting down answers. I remember even getting when I was in 5th grade, I think, getting dropped off at the library because I had to do a research paper on spiders, and then I would just go to the encyclopedia and then just copy everything word for word from there because again, like you said, it's nobody checked, nobody verified, and like you said, they at least they tried. So now it's just simply the tools are getting more sophisticated for all of that. But one thing to note too, though, is that I think even with teachers, like you're saying, letting them know more and more that even just the information that you get from these large language models is not going to be 100% accurate. That's something that teachers should readily know and be able to see. And also, even just by one day to the next, a child from that had a writing level, maybe that was a little bit lower. And then all of a sudden, the next day, they turn this paper in that is just completely different and revamped from what they're used to. That should raise some flags too, as well. But then at the same time, you say, "Well, at least they tried." We need to make sure that they're just not trying, but they actually know that the information out there is not going to be 100% accurate because all of that data that is being used to train the models with, a lot of that data has a lot of bias that is already built in because of just people in general, the way that we write, the way that we think, the way that we feel. And then all of a sudden, all of this is coming here all in one spot. And now you're taking this output and thinking like this is 100% truth. And that's one thing that scares me about as far as teachers when they use this, that their outputs, they just simply trust just because it is a specific name of a platform. They're like, "Oh, this is perfect. It's gotta be accurate because they're an education platform and they've got 1,000 followers and they've got this, so everything has to be accurate," and it's not, and I think that is what scares me a lot too as well, that giving this information, this content that's created, and then giving it to the students and saying that it's truth without any research behind it, and it's very scary for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I believe that it is important that everybody understands where the information comes from and what these models actually do. If I give my students some, I don't know, biased information in a text that has been produced by AI, and then some parents come and complain about it, I could just not blame AI. So the importance of understanding, like the we are the professionals, all right? We are the professionals. We are the ones who have to make the decision. We are still the decision makers, all right? This idea of co-creating with the tool. I cannot just simply allow the systems to do the job for me. I'm going to use you as a thought partner. I'm going to use you as my assistant. But in the end, again, and I want to highlight this because I believe that this is the key thing when it comes to the use of AI in our classrooms. I account responsible for what happens and for the material I share with my students. But again, it is important that everybody is informed, even students, how these platforms work. So before introducing ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever language model you want to use, whatever educational platform you want to share with your students, everybody needs to be well informed on what this is all about. I just want to highlight that because otherwise, okay, I read like 20 or 30 years ago when you saw something on TV, just simply because it was on TV, you believed that was right. Now we are just exposed to information that you don't know whether it is true or not. So this idea of teaching students to be cautious and teaching them to analyze the information critically. We have been talking about critical thinking skills. But what is it that teachers are doing to actually teach those skills? I believe that little has been done in terms of helping students develop these necessary skills. Thanks to the revolution with AI, we have started questioning this again, and we do need our students to develop skills that will allow them to read material and determine whether that is fake or not, whether that is real or not. So there are lots of things that we will have to do in order to make sure that they can make a good use of AI in their own lives and when they graduate or whatever. So we are talking about teaching life skills that will allow them to use whatever tool, because again, we are talking about a tool. AI and all these platforms have to be seen as what they are, tools, and that's it. We have to reflect upon the use of the tools, how we are going to use them. But if you don't know how, I don't know, a remote control works, it is very likely that you are going to make mistakes until you find out exactly how it works. With AI, there are certain mistakes that we cannot make because they can manipulate people's minds through all that information. You were talking about biased information. Most of the content on the internet contains biased information, fake information. You cannot rely on the information that these tools are generating. They are creating there. So who is behind the key? All right.
Yes.
So we have been talking about the manipulation of the minds through social media. This is much more powerful than social media. And children, teenagers, do not have the necessary skills to tell what is real or not. Like in our case, we have developed these skills throughout the years without AI. So we are more reflective upon the content and we are much more careful. But this kid will grow up exposed to information in any sort of format, pictures, videos, or whatsoever, without having developed the ability of telling true from what is it, fake from real. You know, how is it that we are going to help them develop those skills? That's a big question.
It is, and it's a question that we definitely have been talking about or discussing. At least I see it in at least a lot of posts, but it also seems like it always gets drowned out by more information on using it, and really with no regard to the dangers. I think right now, one thing that you mentioned to me, one thing that worries me too, is a lot of these applications that are coming out for like mental health or like to assist students. But now students are talking to a chatbot, and now what if something happens with that chatbot, just gives wrong information, gives something that could be dangerous, something that maybe pushes that child over the edge? We don't think about those things. And I know that there's a lot of people that say, "Oh, this is going to be good. This is going to help. This is going to end." But it's always all in the name of progress, because it's like, "Hey, you can't crack, or you can't make an omelet without cracking some eggs." No, but that's the wrong attitude. Like, I want something that's going to work 100% of the time, 100% of the time, every single
Right.
time. I don't want something that's going to work 60% of the time, 100% of the time, because that could be very dangerous. And so those are some of the things, like you mentioned, when the younger generation grows up already with a lot of mobile devices and so on. And that's the life that they live. And like you said, they find it difficult maybe to find out what is really real and what is not, what is fiction, what is nonfiction. And like you said, developing those critical thinking skills is something that is important for you and I, who grew up later on without the devices and so on. We've developed that over the years, and it's something that's a little
Right.
bit different. It's something that I know students today can still develop, but we really need to make the effort in doing so. But it all starts too with proper teacher training. We need to also make sure that these applications are accountable and make sure that they're completely transparent and that they're talking to parents, and school districts are talking to parents, because this can be something that can be just very big and can turn out very ugly very quick, just with a couple of simple responses. And even us as adults finding these mistakes, we're thinking to ourselves, wow, imagine this coming out in one of these applications and being an answer to a question that a student has. That could be very dangerous. And they always talk about, and I think there's this false sense of security just because, oh, we're an education app and we already create the prompts for you. And so it's almost like this false sense of safety, and they really can't put too many guardrails on it because they don't own the large language model. They're plugging into another large language model, whether it be OpenAI, API, things of that sort. So how can you put guardrails on something that you don't own? It's almost like it's like a crapshoot. You're rolling the dice to see and hoping that 99%, 99.9% of the time you're getting the right output. And that's very scary still.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, this idea of like I wanted to highlight the idea of trying to reduce the risk every time we incorporate a tool, no matter what the name is of the tool, like reducing the risks, understanding how the platforms work and all the mistakes that they can generate. Okay, hold on. Again, the critical. Uh, and it seems to me that people are trying, or teachers are trying to transform the whole thing and shift it to the AI like world. But there are so many other things that you can do in the classroom that have nothing to do with the digital world, especially when it comes to very young children need to play the old style. Like they need to dress up, they need to color, they need to, and you cannot do that with AI. Like they need the hands-on learning experience. And we have to take that as an advantage. There are so many life skills that you can learn when you are a kid. Your teachers need to use that in order to make sure that the children are treated as what they are, children, and they have the right to learn like the old school. Like in this particular case, I would say that it's like the old school, because in kindergarten, you learn the basic and the basis, what will shape you in the future. We have to be extra careful. We have to remember that AI is just another tool that hasn't come to replace like anything. It's not here to replace anything. It's just another tool that you can use to make, for example, your lesson planning in a shorter period of time. That's fine. But then how you use it with the students, that's a completely different story. I use it from time to time with my students because, okay, they feel motivated. There are certain things that they can do that they wouldn't be able to do if it wasn't for the AI. But that's it. I still use my textbooks. I still use, I don't know, some of the teaching strategies or techniques that I used, I don't know, 10 years ago, because they have proven successful, which is not the case of AI yet. So careful. Again, for me, it's just another tool that spices up what happens in the classroom. And that's it. Like, careful.
Perfect. Very well said, Marce. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your insights and thank you so much for allowing us to learn a little bit more about what is going on in Argentina, what you're doing also, and being very active in informing and educating your colleagues, your students, your community, and how there's a group of you now also that is growing to do these things and using it responsibly in the classroom too as well, and just being those cautious advocates, which is exactly what it is that we need. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing, and thank you so much also like for being on the show. I know like just last week we connected on LinkedIn, maybe it was like Thursday or something like that, and now you're on the show, so it's just wonderful to be able to have you on such short notice, and thank you for making time out of your busy schedule to be here and just share your these wonderful perspectives. Thank you so much.
It's a real pleasure. And I need, like, it's not that I need, but I believe that we need to keep on discussing about all these issues. We all share the same concern. Those teachers who are fully committed to children's education need to hold this conversation. We need to keep on talking about what is going on, draw our conclusions on what is the best or for the best interest of our students and for ourselves as well, because again, we are the ultimate responsible of what happens in the classroom. So thank you very much for having me. Like it was totally like unexpected, but thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Marce. But before we go, I always like to end the show with the last three questions. So here we go. So I want to ask you, Marce, now I know we talked a lot about AI and all just how we're very cautious about it and everything. But I want to ask you, in the current state of education, actually, let me rephrase that. We know that every superhero has a weakness. So we know, for example, Superman, his greatest weakness was kryptonite. It was just something that just caused him just to feel very weak or just feel very just discouraged, almost defeated in that sense. So I want to ask you, in the current state of education, whether it's AI or not AI, what would you say is your current EDUKryptonite?
All right. So when it comes to the biggest concern that I had regarding education at this moment has to do with the role that parents have in the whole picture. And like now at this moment, teachers hold lots of responsibilities and we have been left alone somehow. I'm really concerned about that. And the lack of information, I believe, is the greatest flaw within the whole thing.
And
Yeah. So
I was going to say those are really great points. I think that's one thing that I often express is that for myself, the word we use learning community a lot. And we always talk about, oh, how can we improve our learning community? And oftentimes when schools use that, it's usually just, let's say, superintendent, directors, teachers, students, and that's where it stops. But it doesn't include the parents. And it just seems like somehow, some way within the school setting or system, or something that almost parents have become excluded from those conversations and maybe almost feel unwelcomed into when coming to a school or things of that sort. But like you said, I think a lot of the issues or maybe just concerns can easily be remedied if the parents are involved in those conversations and felt feel welcome. This is the community that I choose to bring my child to come to school. Why not be grateful to the parent? Because without those students, there wouldn't be a school, there wouldn't be a teaching
right.
job, things of that sort. And oftentimes we forget the source, which is not just the student, but the parents. And I think that's so important. So I agree with you on that. I think I've always been saying that since I started the podcast and even before, it's the importance of bringing parents into the conversation is something that can be
Yes.
just a great change agent for the community as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. So my second question to you is if you could have a billboard with anything on it there in Argentina, just people driving and they can see it, what would be on your billboard and why would that be on your billboard?
Wow. Like it would be like a big one, like a big one, because I would love to highlight the importance of the responsible use of whatever it is that you are using, no matter what it is, and no matter whether it is related to education or not. But it has to do with the responsible use of whatever it is that is in your hand. Basically, that. Basically, that we need to be responsible. Yeah. And
That's
when
a
it
good
comes to that when it comes to education, even more, because we are like touching these little minds and souls. So responsibility should be the priority for everybody in this world. If we were more responsible with what we do, I believe that the world would be a much better place.
great billboard. I like that. Responsibility. And the last question, Marce, it doesn't have to be teacher related or anything, but I want to ask you, do you have a favorite hobby or activity that you wish that maybe you could turn into a full-time profession?
Okay, the fact is that I'm obsessed with teaching. I'm really obsessed with it and I'm obsessed with learning. So the hobby that I enjoy the most is that of reading. So if there was a possibility of becoming a professional reader, then that would be like suitable for me.
Oh, that would be amazing, honestly. I told my wife, like you said, I love learning. I said, if I could be a professional learner and somebody just pays me just to learn, I'd be so happy just to be doing that because I love it.
Absolutely, because I was thinking about it and I said, okay, if I were paid for studying, that would be like, wow. I would devote 24/7 to studying. Yeah. Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Excellent. Marce, thank you again so much for joining us on the podcast. Thank you so much for all your insights. Like is again, like I mentioned, it was a great conversation, very powerful insights. Thank you so much for being very bold too, as well, as far as how you feel about what AI can do, can't do, but also the caution and just your boldness in stating just how responsible we are as educators for what our students see, what our students use. And in the end, that's us, that's who we are. So thank you so much for that awesome boldness. It's so refreshing to hear somebody very bold like you say those things. So thank you. I appreciate you. And to all our audience members, thank you as always for all of your support. Like I mentioned, I appreciate all the likes, the shares, the follows. Please make sure that you visit our website so you can check out this amazing episode and the other 279 wonderful episodes of My EdTech Life. So visit our website at myedtech.life, myedtech.life. And I promise you, you will find an episode just for you. We've got episodes with teachers, educators, creators, founders. And I promise you, you'll find those knowledge nuggets that you can take and sprinkle onto what you are already doing great. And again, like I mentioned, please make sure, if you haven't done so yet, jump over to our YouTube channel and please make sure you give us a thumbs up and subscribe. We'd really appreciate that so much. And thank you as always for being part of our conversation. We do what we do for you so we can bring you some amazing guests, amazing conversations, amazing topics, all to continue to add to our education space so we can continue learning from one another. So thank you as always. And until next time, my friends, don't forget, stay techie.